A female black slave was the fastest cotton picker among all the slaves on the plantation. While others could pick at most 200 pounds a day, she could easily exceed 500 pounds. Her exceptional efficiency, coupled with her good looks, made her a favorite of the white slave owner, a fact that did not escape the plantation mistress's notice. In truth, she had long sensed her husband's intentions toward Patsy. She had repeatedly demanded that the female slave be sold, but her requests were always refused. Watching her husband grow more and more brazen, she finally reached the breaking point. During a dinner party, she suddenly scratched Patsy's face fiercely with her nails. Yet the slave owner, who had always doted on Patsy, did nothing this time. After all, he would never quarrel with his wife in public over a slave. To them, slaves were ultimately nothing more than toys, easily replaceable when broken. So he grabbed the weeping Patsy off the ground like garbage and dragged her out of the hall. On this plantation, black slaves endured heavy labor during the day and were often woken up at night to perform singing and dancing for the master's amusement. Early the next morning, the sleep-deprived black slaves were forcibly awakened by the sound of a horn. Even without a full night's rest, they dared not delay the day's work. One black man collapsed and died in the cotton field from exhaustion. Those nearby were already accustomed to such scenes. They simply dug a shallow hole and buried him. In fact, the black slaves here had long grown desensitized to life and death. In their eyes, death might even be a form of liberation. The mistress called over a black slave named Solomon and sent him to the town to make purchases. To prevent him from escaping, the mistress deliberately asked if he could read or write. Only after receiving a negative answer did she let him leave with peace of mind. Solomon had indeed planned to escape during this trip, but before he could get far, he stumbled upon several white men executing runaway black slaves throughout the entire southern region. Any black person without identification papers was regarded as unclaimed property, and white people had the right to dispose of them arbitrarily. Fortunately, the identity tag around Solomon's neck saved his life. He walked trembling past the two black slaves and finally realized that escaping was impossible. He had no choice but to turn back to the plantation. Life on the plantation remained brutal. The slave owner took pleasure in torturing black slaves all day long, and at night, he even brazenly broke into Patsy's quarters to assault her, something the mistress could only endure in silence. Until one day, the slave owner searched frantically for Patsy everywhere. He assumed she had run away, which would mean a huge financial loss for him. 2 hours later, Patsy finally returned. The slave owner grabbed her by the neck and shouted, demanding to know if she had tried to escape. Solomon, standing nearby, tried to step forward to help, but was slapped away. Only then did Patsy get a chance to explain. She had gone to a neighboring plantation to borrow soap because the mistress hated Patsy. She refused to give her any soap for bathing, unable to bear the smell on her body any longer. Patsy had no choice but to go out and borrow some, but the slave owner thought she was lying. He ordered the steward behind him to strip Patsy naked, tie her to a tree, and prepare to whip her severely. Yet when it came time to strike, he hesitated. His wife kept urging him on, so the slave owner called Solomon over and told him to whip her in his place. First, Solomon carefully controlled his strength, making the whip crack loudly, without leaving a single red mark on Patsy's body. The mistress could not stand it any longer, accusing Solomon of treating them like fools. The slave owner immediately picked up a gun and threatened him. If he did not whip her hard, he would take revenge on all the slaves. For the sake of everyone's safety, Solomon had to swing the whip forcefully. Patsy's screams echoed relentlessly until she finally collapsed and fainted. A black slave was hanged from a tree with a rope. For 8 long hours, he struggled to stand on his tiptoes, pressing them firmly against the ground. Only in this way could he breathe a little air and avoid suffocating to death. Countless black slaves passed by him, but not one dared to step forward to untie him. Even his closest friend only dared to secretly offer him a few sips of water. This man was Solomon, and the root of all this traced back to not long before. At that time, Solomon was a free black man with a wife and children. He made a living by playing the violin. Life was not wealthy, but at least they had enough food and clothing. After performing at a dinner party, he received a generous payment. Overjoyed, he drank a few too many cups and soon passed out drunk. Unexpectedly, when he woke up, he was already chained up, reduced to a slave to be bought and sold. First, he refused to submit and tried to rally his fellow captives to resist, but all he got in return was a severe beating. He was then escorted onto a ship bound for the south. The long voyage and harsh conditions led to the death of black people on the ship every day. Fortunately, he managed to survive. Later, he was sold to a lumber camp where the owner had purchased many black people to cut down trees. There were white foremen and overseers at the camp who strictly supervised the slaves' work. Solomon began his daily life of logging. After working for some time, Solomon noticed a problem at the camp. He suggested to Ford that they could transport the lumber by water, which would not only improve efficiency, but also significantly reduce costs. The foreman scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as worthless coming from a black man. But Ford expressed his willingness to give it a try. With Ford's support, Solomon immediately set to work. He tied the logs together with ropes to make rafts and let them drift downstream. The method proved effective. The workers, realizing their future work would be much easier, cheered enthusiastically. Ford was also impressed by by Solomon, and specially gave him a violin as a reward. However, Solomon's success completely humiliated the foreman, making him a laughingstock in everyone's eyes. From then on, the foreman constantly found trouble for Solomon. Helpless, Solomon could only try to stay as far away from him as possible, but the foreman refused to let up. Finally, on this day, when the foreman came to provoke him again, Solomon could no longer hold back his anger. He tackled the foreman to the ground and whipped him fiercely in return. The foreman's wails attracted the overseers, and Solomon finally came to his senses. Hearing the foreman threaten revenge, he deflated like a punctured balloon. Standing frozen in place, Solomon knew in his heart that the foreman meant what he said. Even if the foreman killed him, he would face no consequences. He never expected the revenge to come so quickly. The foreman gathered 2 accomplices and, ignoring the overseers' attempts to stop them, directly hanged Solomon from a tree. It was not until evening that Mr. Ford hurried over to save him. Ford knew the foreman's true nature well. If Solomon stayed, he would surely be killed. So Ford sold him to a plantation. The new owner had a terrible reputation, notorious for torturing slaves. The black slaves' job was to pick cotton. They had to work non-stop. Even a moment's slowness would result in a whipping. Every day during the inspection, the owner would weigh the cotton each slave had picked. The one who picked the most would only receive a word of praise, while those who picked too little would suffer severe punishment. Solomon, though strong, was not skilled at picking cotton. On his first day, he failed to meet the quota and was dragged away to be whipped. After a long day of hard work, he thought he would finally get to rest, but unexpectedly, the owner suddenly burst in, forcing them to get up and dance, and ordering Solomon to play the violin as accompaniment. Exhausted, Solomon realized that this place was also not somewhere he could stay for long. A plan to escape the plantation began to quietly take shape in his mind. He was once a renowned violinist, but now he had been reduced to a mere black slave. Over the 12 years as a slave, Solomon had plotted 3 escapes. However, his first 2 plans were betrayed by friends. The successive betrayals made him dare not trust anyone again, until he met that white man from Canada. Solomon's first betrayal occurred while he was on a ship heading to the slave market. He reached an agreement with 2 other black men who shared his fate, planning to rally the black people on the ship to protest together. But on the night before the action, one black man was killed by white men, and the other was picked up by his owner early the next morning. Their agreement was quickly forgotten. The second betrayal happened a few years after he was sold to a plantation. A white man working on the farm gained his trust through deception. Solomon wrote a distress letter with mulberry juice left from breakfast, begging the man to send it to his family. Unexpectedly, to curry favor with the slave owner, the man immediately reported him. The night the owner came to his quarters. Fortunately, Solomon thought on his feet. He told the owner that the white man was a drunkard who had framed him just to get the job of overseer. Moreover, he insisted he couldn't read or write, and even if he could, he had no paper or pen to write a letter. The owner found Solomon's words reasonable and let him off the hook. After these 2 betrayals, Solomon never dared to trust anyone again. He became just another ordinary slave on the farm. Until that day, a special white man arrived at the plantation. His name was Peter, a carpenter hired by the owner to build a pavilion. Peter was an enlightened white man who firmly believed that slavery would eventually be abolished. He thought black people were also human beings and should not be treated like livestock. The owner scoffed at his remarks, considering such ideas dangerous and forbidding him from spreading them on the plantation. He ordered Peter to leave immediately after finishing the work. Solomon hadn't met such a progressive white man in a long time, and thus took a liking to him. They talked a lot while working together. Peter was astonished to discover that Solomon, a black slave, could not only read and write, but also play the violin. He couldn't help but be curious about this man, and asked about his past. In the end, Solomon couldn't hold back any longer, and told Peter his entire story. Finally, he begged Peter to save him, to write a letter to his family, and inform them of his situation. Peter readily agreed, saying it would be his honor to help Solomon regain his freedom. Before long, the pavilion was completed, and Peter left the plantation. Although he had received a promise, Solomon was still unsure if Peter would truly help him. Nevertheless, a glimmer of hope ignited in his heart, sustaining him through the difficult days and nights of suffering. But as time passed, his doubts resurfaced, and he once again despaired, accepting his fate. Until one day, the arrival of a stranger shattered this tranquility. After careful verification, the sheriff confirmed that Solomon was the man he was looking for. Despite the owner's desperate attempts to stop him, the sheriff insisted on taking Solomon away. Solomon jumped onto the carriage without looking back, staring at the fellow slaves he had lived with for so many years. His heart was filled with mixed emotions. He was finally on his way home. It had been exactly 12 years since he left home. Returning to his hometown, everything in front of him was already unrecognizable. Solomon stood at his doorstep, his heart overwhelmed with complex feelings. Finally, he summoned up the courage and pushed open the door. His wife had aged a great deal. Their 2 children had grown into adults. His daughter was not only married, but also had a child of her own. He had missed so much. He could only hold his grandson tightly and burst into tears, unable to say a single word.